right, mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another video. It's that time of year again. It's time to see who won the transfer window. We've got a lot of things to talk about here, okay? It's not just about who you bought in and who you sold. It's about who you needed. It's about how much you spent on them. Did you get good value? It's about your total net spend we're going to look at. You know, did you spend the most in the league? Did you make the most in the league? Where is your team now compared to how it was at the end of last season? There's a lot of factors to consider. We're going to give each of the 20 Premier League teams a grade. It could be an A, it could be an F, okay? It could be anything in between. At the end of the video, I'm going to take all the teams that I've given an A to, because there is more than one, and I'm going to give one of them only an A star, and they are going to be the team that, in my opinion, won the transfer window. As always, I do care about your opinion too. Let me know in the comments below if you think I've had any terrible takes and who you would have given the transfer window to. There's always some difference of opinion on this one. Last year, I didn't give the transfer window to Chelsea, or in January, I should say. I didn't give the transfer window to Chelsea. A lot of you said I was wrong. Surprise. I mean, some of you are always going to say I'm wrong. That's the way football works. I actually gave the transfer window to Arsenal in the end. I thought they had the best January transfer window. You know, they bought players that improved them. And I thought Chelsea's strategy was not necessarily the best. And look where they finished, okay? Ultimately, did they get better at football as a result of the last transfer window? Certainly in the short term, the answer to that was no. So I stand by that and expect similar takes in this video. Some of you are going to get annoyed. Before we get into the video, though, I've got to say a big thanks to today's sponsors, Google Pixel, specifically the Google Pixel 7. Take a look at this. Right, first off, before we talk business, shout out to Google Pixel 7 for the shirt. Look at this. It's actually a beauty. It's a genuinely very nice shirt. I am part of Team Pixel, if you didn't realise, by the way. This is my Google Pixel 7. Today, we're going to talk about the photo unblur feature. This is double decent, okay? I've got a picture here. This is an old picture of me and my brother Seb playing football for a lovely little Sunday league team called Taplow Swans. If you know, you know. Claret and blue, of course, we come correct. But of course, the photo could look better, couldn't it? Well, we can make it look better using Google Pixel 7 photo unblur technology. Now, this is an enhancement of the face unblur feature where the Pixel 7 can actually identify areas within the photo that look a bit blurry or out of focus. And what it does is it can improve their quality and their sharpness. So you've seen the original picture. Here is the new improved version. Look at this. Bang. We've taken it to the 21st century, baby. That's a lovely picture of me and my brother Seb. I think Seb might have scored a couple goals that game. I probably didn't score, but let's say I did. It's super easy to use the photo unblur feature. You literally just go on your photos, you click edit, tools, unblur, and it does the rest for you. Here's a Brucey bonus as well. It will also give you the option to remove things in the background, including the people. You can see some players in the background. We don't want them, right? Let's get rid of them. I click one button, which comes up at the bottom saying remove people in the background, and voila, look at that. They're gone. Suddenly it's just me and Seb all in our lonesome. Honestly, it took me seconds to make this photo that much better. So shout out to Pixel 7. We're in Team Pixel. Let's go. More information you need about the Google Pixel 7, check out the description. There's links in there for you. Back to the video. Right, without further ado, let's get into it. Alphabetical order means we start with Arsenal. Some would say AFC Bournemouth come before them. I'm going Arsenal. Right. 167 million net spend. So 167 million loss. These figures are provided by Transfermarkt, by the way, if you're wondering. That means they were 19th out of 20 teams in terms of the amount spent or the amount lost. In this case, they spent a lot of money, but did they spend it well? They bought in Declan Rice. I've already got into detail about exactly how I feel about that transfer of a Declan Rice reaction video. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. They also bought in Havertz from Chelsea. They bought in Timber, okay, who's since been injured. Now, are we looking at his injury as part of the transfer? I don't think we can. We can't judge Arsenal to say they bought a guy and then he's basically going to be out for the season. You have to look at the transfer itself, not the subsequent injury. Obviously, David Raya they got in as well. They lost the likes of Xhaka, Tierney, Balogun, Holding. They got good money for a couple of these guys. Certainly Balogun and Xhaka, I would say. Obviously, I've got the majority of the transfers on the screen. Not all of them. We're just going with the key ins and outs. There are other additions and player movements that aren't on the screen, but there's a lot to talk about here. Basically, I think Arsenal had a good window. I think they've improved their starting 11. Declan Rice certainly does that. Xhaka out, Rice in straight away. It's a big improvement. Anyone that disagrees with me on that is wrong. Timber, I think, was a fantastic buy. It's gutting for them that he's injured, but the buy itself was good. It improved their defence. Havertz is the question mark for me because it was a lot of money. They gave Chelsea, who needed the money because they're going to spend a lot of it, or have spent a lot of it, some money, a rival, a lot of money for a player who hadn't set the world alight at Chelsea, hasn't set the world alight at Arsenal so far, and I'm not sure he's going to. Okay, he could, but even if he does, he kind of has to because of how much they've spent on him. I think it was a risk and money they could have spent better. However, that's my only real criticism of Arsenal. I'm actually going to give them an A for Arsenal, because I think it is a good window. I like the way they do business. Edu is doing bits, and yes, they spent a lot of money, but they have improved their team, most importantly. They're going to be even closer to Man City this year. Maybe not close enough, but I think they're going to stick around the top part of that table as a result of a good window. Find out at the end of the video whether they got an A star or not. Next is Aston Villa, okay? 60 million net spend. That's a 60 million loss, essentially, they've made. Puts them bang in the middle of the table, 10th in terms of net spend. But I love what they've done. They've definitely improved their 11. They've got Pau Torres at centre-back. They've had to then go and get Longley in on loan because of the injury to Tyrone Mings. They've done what they needed to do. Centre-back's taken care of. Obviously, they've got Diaby in, who looks very good. Tielemans on a free transfer, very astute. Zaniolo in as well. You know, very hotly tipped from Roma. He went to Galatasaray for a bit. He's now joined the Premier League. Cameron Archer going to Sheffield United. Not sure about that one. I like Cameron Archer. I'm a bit biased because he did bits for me in a hashtag United Football Manager save. But I think he's shown at Sheffield United that he's definitely a Premier League player. But they had to get some money back in. I don't mind the window at all from Villa. I'm a big fan of Emery, and I think their 11's better. And I'm also giving them an A. Next is Bournemouth. Okay, so 126 million loss on the net spend. That puts them 15th in terms of money lost in the table. They brought in the likes of Alex Scott. West Ham were after him. Very hotly tipped. He's injured, but expect him to be a good Premier League player. Max Aarons is back in the Premier League. They've got Justin Kluivert. They've got Tyler Adams and Sinisterra from Leeds. I think they were both players that needed to be in the Premier League. And I think they've improved their team. Lerma's gone out, of course. They are trying to change things, aren't they? They're trying to change the way they play football. They're trying to make themselves a stalwart of the Premier League. They stayed in it last year, changed manager. They've got a lot to do to become the team they want to become, but I don't mind the signings at all. They have spent a fair bit of money, but they're showing ambition. I'm giving them a B. I think they could have gone a bit bigger, a bit bolder with some of their signings, but I like everyone they've brought in. So it's a B for Bournemouth, not bad. Brentford next. Now, 55 million they spent net. It's 9th in the Premier League in terms of the amount spent. They got in Collins from Wolves. They got in Flecken as a new goalkeeper, letting Raya go out the other way. Obviously, he joined Arsenal. Sharda as a striker. They needed a striker. He was on loan last year. Obviously, Tony is out at the moment, suspended. They also brought in Malpe from Everton. So they've sort of sorted out the attack. We've seen from the start of the season, they don't look too much worse without Tony. Tony could well be sold when he comes back. Could go to a big club. Brentford are a mini Brighton for me. They do great business. Maybe not as good as Brighton, but still very good. And I think their team is as good as it was before. Maybe not loads better. They're between a B and a C for me, but I'm just fond of Brentford's transfer business in general, so I'm going to give them a B. Speaking of Brighton, they're next, okay? In terms of net spend, they were number one. They made profit. It's very hard to make profit in the Premier League and still be a good side. They've done that. Look at the way they've started the season. They're clearly a good side. They made a 86 million profit. That's insane. Okay, obviously we know how they've done that. They've brought in these players, but some of them we haven't heard of, right? But it doesn't matter. I trust in Brighton. Brighton have earned my trust through many continuously good transfer windows. So even if they bring in someone I've never heard of, like Baluba, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right there, Julio, Pedro, I know a little bit about from his time at Watford, but I back them. Then what they've done a little bit different this year is they've got a bit of experience in. James Milner is a very non-Brighton signing, typically, although we have seen them bring in experienced pros before, like Danny Welbeck. They've brought in Dahoud from Dortmund. Now, they need that experience going into European competition. They need more squad depth. Ansu Fati on loan from Barcelona is a steal. I think he could be very good for them. He doesn't even have to start because they've got great players in those positions already, but he will play a part with the additional fixtures they have this year. And then in terms of the players they've lost, the downside is they're all starters. They're all massive players. McAllister, Saicedo, Sanchez, right? But if there's any team in the Premier League that is equipped to replace losing starting players, it is Brighton. And you look at the value they've got for those players, particularly Caicedo, obviously one of the biggest transfers in Premier League history, over 100 million, and he hasn't started well at Chelsea. Brighton know. Brighton, there's something you have to know as an owner of a club or a football, for want of a better word, intellectual. And it's hard to quantify it, but Brighton know it, and Todd Boehly doesn't know it right now. I think people will teach him it in time. But in my opinion, Brighton understand there's a number that makes a player no longer worth keeping at your club. And when that number is hit, you sell. And Chelsea seem to have a different strategy, which is pay whatever the price to get the player. And sometimes you go past a tipping point where that player no longer becomes worth it. And Brighton understand that and Chelsea don't. So I think Brighton have had a fantastic window considering their starting 11 maybe isn't as good as it was at the end of the last year, but the young players coming through are only going to get better. I back them to get the next big thing every single time. Use the money well. They're in profit. They get an A. Okay, well done, Brighton. Next up is Burnley. Now, I'm a big fan of Vincent Kompany, used to work for him. I hope they stay in the Premier League. I like how he's completely changed the ethos at Burnley. They're smack bang in the middle of the net spend table. They spent 107 million, which shows ambition from a Premier League standpoint. 100 million is about what you get for getting promoted. They've spent it, they've invested it. Have they invested it the right way, though? I have to say, I don't think they have, okay? Trafford from City, goodbye, very promising young goalkeeper. But the outfield players, Nathan Redmond, Sander Berg's had a go in the Premier League already with Sheffield United. He came in as a promising, high potential player, didn't deliver on it. Obafemi, I'm not in love with these signings. The people they've lost are not important. Ashley Barnes had his time. Weghorst gone out on loan. He's not a player that fits the way Vincent Kompany wants to play. The problem I have with Burnley is the way Kompany wants to play, I don't think he hasn't good enough players to do it in the Premier League successfully. I think there's a good chance they could go down. Obviously, since the Premier League predictions video, I have seen more of these teams. I've watched the opening games, and I'm not convinced they're going to stay up. They've spent money, but I don't think they've spent it fantastically well. It's hard to get players that want to play the way Kompany wants to play for a good price. They're expensive types of players. And 107 million loss, I don't think they're going to stay up necessarily. If they do, they'll just survive. So it's actually a D for me. They've been good marks so far. Every team had an A or B so far, but Burnley get the first D. Next up is Chelsea, the big one, the biggest spenders. Nearly 200 million net spend, 200 million loss, if you like. There's too many players to talk about here, but the key ones in terms of additions, Disasi, Jackson, Nkunku, who's injured, but we don't judge it on that. Sanchez, the goalkeeper from Brighton. Caicedo, obviously. Lavia, Palmer for Man City. You've got the fact that they beat Liverpool to the signings of the likes of Lavia and Caicedo. It was a bit of ego involved. Was there a bit of one-upmanship? Did they need them both? Have they bought too many players again? I think the answer to that is yes. All of these players in isolation could go on to be very, very good. And they've got a great manager to bring young players through. But I think they've got too many again. They can't all be good. They can't all get the game time they need. And equally, they haven't got enough experience around them. Take Thiago Silva out of that team in terms of experience, and maybe Raheem Sterling. There isn't much there. They lost a lot of experience, the likes of Azpilicueta, Kante going out, and a lot of these free transfers. Ziyech out on loan, no money for him. Aubameyang gone. I'm glad he's gone. Koulibaly, what a poor transfer that was in the end. Hudson-Odoi, they could have sold him for maybe 50 million a year or so ago when he was in demand. I think he's gone for just a little bit over 5 million to a Premier League rival, Nottingham Forest. Hall, the young left-back. They have to sell, Cobham graduates, if you like, every year now. This policy that Todd Boehly's gone into with the 8-year contracts and the kind of player amortization to allow this heavy expenditure to not be too bad on the balance sheet only works if they sell players every year that cost them very little, which essentially is an academy graduate. Cost them nothing, sell them for 30, 40 mil, multiple players like that a season, whether it's Loftus-Cheek, whether it's people like Tomori in the past, Hall this year to Newcastle. They have to do it. They've put themselves in that situation. They've got to keep doing it for years to come. And it's a shame because Hall could be a great player and he's gone to Newcastle, who are definitely a rival. Kovacic has gone to Man City. Havertz is a good departure for them because he wasn't working for them and they got good money for him. Then his downside has gone to Arsenal, but I'm not sure he's going to strengthen them that much. Pulisic has gone. Listen, the best transfer they've done this season, I do have to say thank you to Chelsea for this, is they've sent a player on loan to hashtag. Yes, Ted Kurd, the future best goalkeeper of all time, has come to hashtag United. We've loaned our first men's player from a Premier League club. Make sure you're on board with the latest hashtag videos if you're not, because we're getting some proper players now. We've got ex-Premier League players like Greg Halford, and we've got a current Premier League player or signed to a Premier League team in Ted Kurd, who's made his debut for us in the FA Cup. We won. He kept a clean sheet. He's England under-18s goalkeeper. He played more minutes than anyone else in the under-18s Premier League last year, and now he plays for the Tags. So get on board. Thank you to Chelsea for loaning us that. However, I've got to stay true to my word. I've got to do the ranking system I suggest, and this might surprise some people, but in terms of their first team business, I've got to give Chelsea a D. I think they've spent so much money, not just over this window, but the last few, and their team isn't better. They are no closer to competing with Man City. They won the Champions League just a few years ago. Almost none of those players remain now, and there's no way this current team beats the team that won the Champions League, but they've spent like £1 billion almost. How does that make sense? It doesn't. They could all come through, but I think the sheer number of the players they've bought means they won't, and they're going to have some dead ducks left around in a few years. They're on long contracts that aren't cutting it. So it's a D for Chelsea. Chelsea fans, come at me. Crystal Palace next. Okay, 38 million net spend in terms of a loss. That puts them 8th in the Premier League. Not a lot of money spent really in the grand scheme of things. Lerma's come in. Henderson, goalkeeper from United. Rob Holding from Arsenal. Some solid Premier League players that are very Palace players. Steady Eddies. Going to keep them in the league, I'm sure. But they lost Zaha. They haven't really replaced him. you've almost got to give them some points for the fact they kept Eze and they kept Elise, right? That's big, or Elise. That's big. But I think if they got another attacking player like those two, a young player, maybe out of the Championship, or maybe, from wherever, that would have been really exciting for them. But not replacing Zaha, I don't think it's going to cause them a problem. I don't think they're going to be in a relegation scrap, but I don't think they're kicking on, which is why I can't give them better than a C. Okay, it's just a steady transfer window from Palace. Everton next. Okay, 33 million profit. They're in profit. Okay, now in Brighton's case, that was great because they did good business. They sold players, they reinvested it. Everton need to spend money because they are a bad side. Look at the league table. They're a bad team and they haven't. And I know there's reasons for that. Since a certain amount of years now since COVID, that's having an effect on the balance sheet in terms of financial fair play. Wolves are in a similar position, but the end of the day is they're in a relegation scrap as a result of not investing. Ashley Young has come in. He's 38 years old. Great career, but is he going to improve them? Dan Juma, not convinced by him based on what I've seen at Spurs and Everton. Harrison from Leeds, Beto as a striker, bit of Iwobi, Maupai have gone out. Mina was released. Gabamin was released. They're not better. They're not better. They need to overhaul their attack, considering Calvert-Lewin can't play more than about 10, 15 minutes a season. So they haven't done that for me. They've brought in a few attacking players, but I'm not seeing it come through on the pitch. Honestly, Everton, they're getting an F. And I know there's reasons. I'm not saying they should spend recklessly when they're in a bad financial position, but if it costs them their league status, it's going to cost them £100 million, which is much. It's going to hurt them a lot more than, whatever the punishment is for breaking financial fair play, because City don't seem to get one. So that's Everton, F, I'm afraid. Fulham next. 16 million they spent net. 5th best in terms of net spend in the Premier League. Iwobi come in from Everton, as we just mentioned. Jimenez and Traore from Wolves. Again, those two financially fair play problematic teams. They've strengthened from there. Castagna in from relegated Leicester. They got Bassi in from Ajax. I like him. Palhinha, they kept him. That's huge. Whether there was a little bit of skullduggery involved on the last day of the transfer window where they let him go and talk to Bayern and then sort of said, sorry, didn't get a replacement. I think they were trying to get McTominay maybe. Whether they wanted to or not, they've kept their player. I know he didn't play in the game after that, but he will play again and he's huge for them. And I would have been annoyed if he'd gone to Bayern because West Ham wanted him at one point and they were like, look, we want 90 million for him or whatever. Bayern are a different prospect to West Ham. Obviously, the player can force that move, but they will lose him eventually, but keeping him for now might keep him in the league. They lost Mitro, huge player for them, Mitrovic, but 45 mil for a 28-year-old who was good, but not crazy good. He's not irreplaceable. There's strikers out there you can get for that amount of money that will do that job. I don't think Jimenez is it, but ultimately it's not a bad window. I think their team is maybe a little bit weaker without Mitro, but the other players they've brought in have given it depth. I'm going to give them a B. It's not a bad window. Liverpool, next. 111 million net spend. Okay, 14th biggest spend in the league. But they don't do loads of business. I like the way Liverpool just go, we like our squad, let's just improve a little bit. I've been saying for years they need to overhaul their midfield. And they've finally done it. And I like who they brought in. Gravenberch on the last day from Bayern Munich. Very hotly tipped youngster. McAllister from Brighton, from a Premier League rival. Szoboszlai looks good already. Endo's the interesting one. A little bit of a steady Eddie. Not going to set the world alight. Don't think he'll have the impact that Fabinho had when he first came in. But they needed to get in that position, clearly, and they have done that. The Saudi money's come in. Steven Gerrard's niced them. Saudi League have niced them. Henderson, Fabinho. Firmino released on a free. Keita released on a free. Milner out. Oxlade-Chamberlain out. There's a lot of wages been freed up there. It's allowed them to go and get some big players. Most importantly, perhaps, they kept Salah. Fair play to them. They turned down 150 mil, maybe more, on the final day. Thing is, it's not the final day though, is it? It was a final day for them to buy someone, but the Saudi market is still open. So we could still see Salah go. If they throw 200 mil at them and they can just get through to January and then maybe reinvest that on a young player. I heard some people saying they could go for Saka. I don't know if Arsenal would let Saka go. I don't know if Saka would want to make that move. Could they throw the money at PSG from Mbappe? That's what I would have done. I'd have gone, Saudi, give us 200 mil, throw it straight at PSG for Mbappe. If he wants to move, which I'm not sure he does, but if they could get that, that'd be genius for Liverpool. But they kept him. The team is better, undoubtedly, than it was this time last season. Is it strong enough to win the league, to beat City? I don't know. It depends how that midfield gel. It's a completely new midfield, but it is a good window from Liverpool. I like their windows in general. I'm going to give them an A. Right, Luton next. Okay, 22 mil net spend. 6th in the league in terms of almost breaking even, right? Mengi in from Man United, Ross Barkley in, Nakamba, who was on loan with them last year from Villa. They made that permanent. Lokonga on loan from Arsenal. All good additions, but is it enough to stay in the league? I'm not sure it is. However, that being said, Luton could have easily spent 120 million or whatever, like a Burnley amount of money, and still not being good enough to stay in the league. They know what they are, okay? If they're clever, they go, look, we're going to just hope for the best. We're not going to spend all the money we get from being in the Premier League. We're going to keep it, make the club better, make the stadium better, whatever they need to do to level up as a club overall. Maybe go back down, but maybe come back again in the future. Maybe go, if they can become a Norwich, if they can become a yo-yo club in and out the Premier and the Championship, that's a massive upgrade for what Luton have been over the last however long. They were in the National League not long ago. So they don't have to have eyes bigger than their stomach. They don't have to become a Premier League regular right now. They can grow the club. So I like what they've done in the sense of, even if they go down, the club's going to be in a way stronger position. So I can't give them more than a C, purely because it is a transfer window video. It's not about club strategy. It's about transfers ultimately. But it's a steady C. And listen, Luton, they know what they're doing. I like it. Man City next. Okay, 128 mil net spend. They're not in profit. They're in a sizable loss, but it's Man City. We know they do that every year pretty much. 16th biggest net spend in the league. Doku in, Vardiol in, Kovacic in from Chelsea, Nunes in from Wolves. Kept Bernardo Silva, of course. He was linked with a move. Mahrez out. Good age to go. Great player, but good age to go. Gundogan out. Again, good time to lose him, even though he's a superb player. Laporte was never a Guardiola favourite. He's gone. Cancelo. Bayern didn't want him. Bayern didn't want to keep him. He's gone to Barcelona. There's maybe an attitude problem there. Maybe just doesn't mesh with Pep Guardiola's way of thinking. He was a great player for them for a while. His time had come. It was time for him to go. They've moved him on. People like Palmer to Chelsea. They've made their mind up on Palmer clearly. I think he's got a bright future. But if he wasn't going to get the game time, they got good money for him. Ultimately, it's a solid window. Have they improved their 11? Maybe with Vardiol. But then I think, replacing Gundogan in the starting lineup is hard. I think he's such a good player. But they've brought in people that can progress. They didn't take Paqueta off West Ham, thankfully, because he's a little betting boy. Maybe. Allegedly. Either way, I don't think it's a bad window from City. It's not a Haaland window. They've not brought in a world game changer. Maybe one of the best young defenders in the world in Vardiol, but they spent a lot of money on him. So I'm going to have to give him a B overall because of the value. It's a lot of money for a defender. But it's a good window. Man United next. Okay. 151 mil net spend, the 18th biggest in the league. Mount, Amrabat, Onana, Højlund. Important, they needed a striker, they've got one. A lot of pressure on him to score goals, amount of money they spent, but we'll see. Reguilon from Spurs is interesting. They had to react after Shaw got injured. They did that. I don't think people are laughing at it, but I don't think it's a bad. I think he's a Ten Hag type player, and he started off pretty decent for Spurs. New goalkeeper, of course. Johnny Evans is an interesting one. Henderson gone. Elanga gone. De Gea gone. The goalkeeping situation has been revamped. Alex Telles gone. Fred gone. Greenwood gone. Looked like they were going to do a PR disaster at one point and keep Greenwood. I think the sentiment was so negative that they changed their mind on that, and I think it's the right decision. But they've kept McTominay. They've kept Maguire. My spider senses tell me if they'd got them off the books, they would have been in a position to get one better player that would improve their 11. They've got 5 centre-backs right now. They've got Varane, they've got Lindelof, they've got Martinez, and then they've got Maguire, and they've got Johnny Evans now. They finished that game against Arsenal with Maguire and Evans at centre-half. That's not a step forward for Man United. I love Maguire. I've said this a lot, but he shouldn't be at a club like Man United. A little bit of criticism for him to not force the move because he should want to play. Maybe because Southgate keeps picking him anyway. He doesn't feel that pressure. But I don't think they got enough off the books. And I think they've gone heavy in centre mid. Unless they end up playing a diamond with 2 strikers, which they could end up doing, Mount, Amrabat, along with Eriksen, along with Casemiro, along with Bruno, they can't all play. They need depth for European competition, but I'm not sure about that one. And all things considered, I'm giving them a C because I think they spent a lot of money. They've improved their 11, but their defence is still question marks if any of them are injured. Like if Varane's injured, which he does tend to get injured quite a lot, people coming in aren't top tier. Let's go to Newcastle next. Okay, 108 million net spend, 13th highest in the league. They've got youthful, exciting players like Livramento and Hall at fullback. That could be their fullback situation sorted for the future as those guys come through and take the place of Burn and Trippier. Tonali straight in the starting lineup. Lovely buy, expensive but good. Harvey Barnes, a lot of teams would have been in for him. Doesn't start for them right now, but could be a starter. It's going to be really useful in European competition. They've got a crazy Champions League group, by the way. And then the player's gone. St. Maximin was a regular performer for them, but often had injury issues. And I think they've gone up a level now in terms of those wide positions. Wood and Fraser, amongst the other departures, many others that aren't particularly important. It's a good window again. They've spent money. Listen, for me, if you've got any ambition in the Premier League, you've got to be spending 100 mil every year. because that is what you get for minimum from being in the Prem. They'll have a lot more than that coming in because they're in the Champions League as well, but they have got to think about financial fair play. So they've strengthened the team, they've strengthened the starting lineup, and they haven't broken financial fair play. They're doing it in the way they have been doing it, which you might have, whatever opinion you have on the ownership at Newcastle, you cannot fault the business they've done since they got their money. So it is a solid window. I'm going to give them a B. I'm not giving them an A because I don't think their starting lineup is loads better. I think they maybe needed one more midfielder in the middle, like Tonali and Bruno and Joelinton. If that's the starting three, that's good. But once you take any of them out, it gets weaker quite quicker. Okay, Nottingham Forest next. 11th biggest net spend, 61 million loss. Lots of players again. They go mad, don't they? Sinagre, Origi, Alanga, Wood, Aina, Turner, Santos, Tavares, Hudson-Odoi. A lot of these players with Premier League experience, of course. They do a lot of business, and I criticised them a little bit for it last year, but it did work. They stayed in the league. Many people didn't think they would. I like the manager. I like what they're doing there. And a net spend of only 61 million. They got good value for money this year. Lingard out, by the way. Andre Ayew out. That was a bit of a weird one. Many other outs as well. Listen, I don't mind it from Forest. I'm a little bit of a convert now after last year criticising them. I don't think they should keep doing these huge overhaul windows. At some point, they've got to stabilise the squad. But I'm going to give them a little bit of backing this year based on what they did last year. So I'm going to give them a B for that window. It's not a bad one. Okay, Sheffield United next. 33 million loss for a club coming up from the Prem. That's not a big gamble. They haven't invested. It's only about 11 mil more than Luton have spent. I think they've got better players than Luton come in, I have to say. Archer has already proven that he's more than worthy of a starting position in his debut. Trusty in from Arsenal. Hamer, who was a really good player in the Championship for Coventry last year. McAtee they had on loan. They've got him on loan again from Man City. Sanderberg out. Ndiaye is the one that is a shame to lose. He was really bright for them last year. Really interesting young player. Obviously, Senegalese international as well. He's gone to Ligue 1 in France. Would have been good to see him stay. Based on what I've seen of the season so far, if any of the three promoted teams are going to stay up, I think it's Sheffield United. They're not getting turned over. They're scoring goals, and I think they're going to be all right, or that they've got the most chance of being all right. 7th in the overall net spend as well. Like, if they go down, they haven't put themselves in a bad position. So it's a win-win for them. So I'm going to give them a B. Nearly an A, to be honest, but I can't guarantee them survival, so it's a B. Okay, Spurs next. Now, the big, obviously, news here is that Harry Kane's gone. But if he was ever going to go, this was the way to do it. Listen, Daniel Levy is no mug. He's got 100 mil for a player who's, what is he, 30? Got a year left on his contract, and he's not gone to a rival. He's left the Premier League. It's genius. Of course, Harry Kane's unbelievable, and you can't replace him, right? But they've done the next best thing. They haven't done a Gareth Bale where they've gone and bought some random guys that aren't any good. They've improved their starting 11. I know they've got people like Ericsson when Bale left. They've got some good players too. But these signings are good. And they're good value. Maddison, great value in hindsight. Looking at the window, the biggest transfer window ever in Premier League history. What a buy he was. Hit the ground running. Premier League proven. Kulusevski loan made permanent. Pedro Porro loan made permanent. Solomon, who's been getting experience at Fulham, now at Spurs. I really like the new goalkeeper, Vicario. The new centre-back, Mickey van der Ven, looks decent. Johnson from Nottingham Forest. We didn't talk about that as a departure from Forest. It's actually a key departure. But they're sort of planning for life without him. You know, they've got other people scoring goals. But Spurs needed backup in case something happens to Richarlison or Son. Johnson is a good player for Spurs, I think. And in terms of players out, listen, Lucas Moura had a great time there, but his time to come to an end. It's only Kane, really, that's left their starting 11. And I like who they've brought in. And listen, I'm not a Spurs fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm actually giving them an A for this window because Kane was going to leave eventually because they weren't winning anything. And I'm glad Kane left for Kane's sake. But they've done next best thing. I don't think they're a worse team. You know, they haven't got as good a striker, but I think they're actually a stronger team now with that creative spark of Maddison and a bit more depth. It's going to be interesting for them. Next up is my boys, West Ham. Now, listen, I've been as critical as anyone about West Ham's transfer business in the past. You know, notoriously, we leave it late. And it looked like we were doing it again this year. Only a couple of weeks before the window ended, we hadn't spent any of the Rice money. We've got a record-breaking amount of money for Declan Rice, over 100 million. And we were never going to be able to replace him, just like Spurs couldn't replace Kane. But you can invest the money and you can make the squad better. And let's be honest, that's what we've done. Not only is our starting 11... I don't know if you can say our starting 11's better, because Declan Rice is so good, right? But it's not worse, if that makes sense, because we've got good players in different positions now. We've lost something you can't replace, an unbelievable defensive midfielder, but we've gained other areas. We've gained an attacking player. We've gained a really good centre-half. We've gained a couple of centre midfielders. I think the squad is better, and we're going to need it in Europa League. And we won the Conference League last year. It was the perfect time for Declan Rice to leave. So with the players we've brought in, Ward-Prowse and Alvarez, particularly in the middle, The midfield as a unit is stronger. Look at the league table right now. I'm not saying West Ham are going to stay there, but it suggests they've had a good window. Kudus coming in from Ajax. Who knows? Who knows how good he's going to be? But based on what people pay for players these days, it's not a massive gamble. Look at what Chelsea are paying for players. What is it, 35, 40 million for him? It's worth the punt. Skamaka gone, of course, another failed striker, but we won the Conference League without him playing much. He played a bit in the group stage, sure, but it was Antonio that was scoring us the goals, and he's still doing it. So fair play to him. Vlasic out, didn't make it for us, but another 11 million in for him. I've got to give us an A, guys. I've got to give West Ham an A. We're in profit. We've lost Declan Rice, huge loss, but we've got such a good amount of money for him. We've improved our starting 11, and we're in profit. And we're in the top 4 right now. Not going to stay there, but so far so good. It's an A for West Ham. Finally, Wolves, on the other side of it, spoiler alert, they're getting an F. They're getting an F, guys. They are going to probably go down. It'd be a miracle if they don't. They've got a financial fair play situation. The chairman's come out and said, guys, look, it's not looking good for us. Just bear with us here. We've got to make some money back. As a result, we've seen Neves obviously go to Saudi. We've seen people like Collins go to Brentford. He strengthened them. Jimenez and Traore both gone to Fulham. Nunes to Man City. They got good money for him and they needed to. That was what they were trying to achieve out the window. But the team is way worse. The team is way worse than it was last year. And it wasn't great last year. Lopetegui's left as a result of this. I don't mind O'Neill. He did a good job at Bournemouth last year. He was unlucky to be replaced. But is he going to keep him in the league? No, they've made a 70 million profit, which is great. It's unbelievable, right, to do that in terms of money. But they're a much worse team. Not like looking at Brighton, who are a different team. Maybe a little bit worse, Brighton, but still good. Still going to be safe. Wolves are potentially going to take that 73 mil profit, but then make a 100 mil loss when they get relegated. Okay? They have to stay up to turn that F into anything else. If they go down, it's an F. Sorry, Wolves fans. Right. That is all 20 teams ranked. Okay? There's 6 teams that got an A. Okay? Arsenal, Villa, Brighton, Liverpool, Spurs, West Ham. Okay? I'm going to give one of them and one of them only an A star, and they're going to win the transfer window. It's not going to be Brighton. I like Brighton's window, but the starting 11 for me, at least right now, isn't better. Still very good. Even though they made profit, it's amazing. They're right up there, but it's not going to be Brighton. Liverpool spent a lot of money. It's good. It's a good window, but I don't think they're going to challenge. Well, they are going to challenge, but I don't think they're going to win the league. But they haven't done like what City did when they bought in Haaland and just gone, look, it's game over. So that's the reason I can't give it to them. And they spent a lot of money. West Ham, Spurs, Arsenal, Villa all had very good windows. Okay, Arsenal ultimately spent a lot of money. They are better, but you have got to think about how much they spent. And the Havertz thing means for me, I can't give them an A star. Villa and Spurs, very good windows. And I'm trying not to have my West Ham spectacles on here, but I'm going to give it to West Ham, guys. I'm giving the A star to West Ham. I'm probably being swayed a little bit by the way the Premier League has started. And maybe I shouldn't be, but the fact is it's out there. And Spurs have started well too. Villa haven't started badly. But West Ham have lost arguably their best player ever, certainly since probably Bobby Moore, right? And they've made the squad better. We get so much stick for doing bad business. You've got to take your hat off. I'm not doing it today because the mullet's not ready, but pretend I've taken my hat off to David Sullivan and all the guys running West Ham because they get a lot of stick, but I like what they've done, regardless of where we finish. You can't argue with the players who brought in. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments below. Tell me I'm a West Ham deluded mug. It's fine. Maybe I am. I don't know. But you've seen me predict West Ham badly in the past. You've seen me slate our transfer windows. It's just not happening today, guys. And I'd be surprised if any of you think the A-star should go to any teams that aren't in those 6. Definitely not Chelsea. No one tell me it's Chelsea in the comments because you'll be getting blocked. You won't really. I need the subscribers. But listen, Ted Kurd to hashtag is massive. So Chelsea get an A-star for that decision alone. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Shout out to Google Pixel 7 for sponsoring the video. Love that from you. And we'll see you on the next one. Until next time, don't go changing.